Hi, and welcome to the Vintage Read Show. The people implicated in what I'm going to share with you today, and those associated with them, will try to convince you that there's nothing new in any of this. They'll encourage you to turn away, eyes glazing over. We've heard it all before. That is a lie. We have never been given so much provable detail, named sources, on the record sources, and real evidence that should be acted on. Now, this brings me no joy, but right is right and wrong is wrong, and I can't excuse any of this. Even if I summon up my best Pollyanna act, I can't unknow what I now know. Not only opportunistic grifting, but arguably criminal behaviour. But I'll leave that to the lawyers to decide. Today, the Daily Mail released their final instalment of the serialisation of sections of Andrew Lownie's book, entitled, out on August 14th. So let's forget sex today and move on to money. How does Prince Andrew fund his extravagant lifestyle? He travels by private jet, he has over £300,000 of privately owned vehicles, he refurbished Royal Lodge to the tune of £7.5 million, he added a swimming pool, a golf range, and he pays annual maintenance of over £250,000. It raises the question, where does all this money come from? His Navy pension, inheritances, or handouts? There is a quote comparing him to a hot air balloon. He seems to float in rarefied circles without any visible means of support. Lownie raises the point that Prince Andrew is believed to have made substantial sums from commercial activities that go under the radar. Now, this has been investigated in the past, like the Mail on Sunday, who concluded that the Prince Andrew had leveraged his status and the contacts he made during his time representing the UK, as special representative for trade and investment. An example of this undisguised avarice from the trade envoy was on a tour of the Kremlin Museum. He made it blatantly clear that he wanted to be given a priceless Fabergé egg. But what is more concerning, Tim Riley, Vice President of the international advisory firm Kroll, was with the Duke of York on this trip. Now, be aware, he has been named. He is a named source. He is someone who is willing to be on the record. And he sounded this morning that Putin could finish Andrew at any time, and by extension the royal family, with the photos, tales and evidence that Mr. Riley has no doubt at all that he holds. Now, knowing William's luck, this is all going to come out, isn't it? When he ascends to the throne, because he's too much of a threat. He's just too popular. But let's go back to Prince Andrew's naval days, because we could put all this in context and see how this sort of all unfolded. After his admirable performance during the Falklands War, his first command was captaining a 60-metre minesweeper. Now, this was rare, really, because his next suitable appointment should have been to command a frigate. But he was passed over for command 3 times because he just wasn't deemed, suitable for much. And he was informed that he had no future in the senior service. And it was announced that he would leave in 1999 after 20 years of service. Now, interestingly, the royal family stepped in at this point. They wanted to keep Andrew within the structure of the Navy, and we can all understand that now. It's thought that Charles actually spoke to a few admirals, and all of a sudden a position was found. He was promoted to commander at the Ministry of Defence. That's quite an example of being a Nepo royal, isn't it? The second day on the job, it must be said that he went out to play golf in an inter-forces tournament. That's pretty much all he did for the 2 years he was in that position. In 2001, Andrew gave an interview that I think is very reminiscent of Meghan's interview with Jamie Kern-Lima, where she wailed about, I work so hard. Andrew moaned about the 14-hour days he was supposedly undertaking, yet he seems to have left at 6 p.m. with all of his colleagues. Yet in the previous 30 days before he moaned, he did in fact spend 2 weeks in the Bahamas, a weekend in Portugal golfing, 3 days in Spain for more golf, 3 days with Ghislaine Maxwell, plus a stay at Jeffrey Epstein's house in Miami, which caused him to skip Eugenie's 11th birthday at Disneyland Paris. In September, he took up his trade role, and at the time, senior foreign officials were determined the British trade policy would not be determined by the location of the best golf courses. It's interesting that the then Prince Charles did try to block this role. He was convinced that it was a disaster waiting to happen. Turns out he was right. Now, Prince Andrew's first big job was to ensure the sale of British-made Hawk aircraft to Bahrain. But he completely destroyed this deal by recommending to the King of Bahrain that he should lease them instead. That was not helpful to Britain, and from that point he was known in diplomatic circles as His Buffoon Highness. He never read his briefs. He was always unarmed. He did not have any suitable information, yet he regarded himself as an expert on every matter. He was actually more intent on selling his home post-divorce, Sunny Hill Park, to the highest bidder while he was over there. Openly rude too. One example being an official trip to Brazil where he refused to engage. He was very rude about the entertainers that was entertaining him. He suddenly left, leaving VIPs in the lurch who were waiting to be presented, really badly snubbed. However, despite this mountain of criticism, his own office claimed success continually. And this was backed up by the chief executive of an engineering firm, who stated that Prince Andrew had helped them win £500 million worth of business. Now, there was a journo on a trip to Kazakhstan who was certainly impressed with Prince Andrew's ability to access the president, business leaders, and even oil fields. As a consequence, it was then unsurprising that Andrew managed to sell Sunny Hill Park for $3 million above the sale price to the son-in-law of the Kazakhstan president. Of course, the palace were very quick to refute any perception of impropriety, and I'll give you the quote. To suggest that the Duke had personally benefited from the public work in Kazakhstan is utterly untrue. Oh, okay then. It should have all been stopped right then. Now, understandably, deals like this were creating increasing concern back in England. Prince Andrew was making a fortune from the company of foreign billionaires in a country devoid of media scrutiny. It sounds a little like the UK, doesn't it? In November 2008, he was off on holiday again, paid for by a convicted Libyan gun smuggler. Of course he did. Then he went on to visit with Colonel Gaddafi. Not surprisingly, he was mates with the dictator's son, meeting him 3 times in the next 7 months. Now, the son, allegedly Gaddafi's fixer. He also spent a private week in Libya with just his bodyguard, supposedly to pursue a new interest, looking at archaeological treasures. Nothing to do with the extensive oil and gas fields in the region. But before I go on, this is sourced. Seriously, this is sourced. And provable evidence just in this one article. How much evidence do you need that this man should have been stopped over 15 years ago? There is just no excuse. But still, there is more horror to unfold. He got close to the authoritarian, and it must be said, corrupt leader of Azerbaijan. Local media suggested Andrew had his own golf complex on the shores of the Caspian Sea. Of course he did. We could have proof of even more. However, Andrew Lownie points out that those in the Central Asian Republic were scared to talk due to the Duke of York's connections to the powerful elite. A former British ambassador to Tunisia wrote to the Foreign Secretary he was trying to do the right thing. He said that Prince Andrew hobnobbing with dodgy Arab businessmen was doing serious damage to the royal family and, more importantly, to Britain's political, diplomatic and commercial interests. They knew. They all knew. I just can't make excuses for this anymore. Now, there was reticence in Whitehall to explain and justify all of this. A Libyan businessman gifted Princess Beatrice an £18,000 diamond necklace for her 21st. The fact that Andrew employed royal staffers rather than even one Foreign Office professional, and all his extensive expenses covered by the UK taxpayer. Now, personal opinion now, this is a grift. Doesn't this make you angry? It makes me so angry. The detail of this. How can anyone justify this or say it's okay? Those in the comments having a go at me saying, stop dragging old stuff up, we already knew. Well then, shame on you. You knew, and you don't even care. The facts are, until this book and these articles from this new book, no one knew this level of detail or had this amount of indisputable proof. How is this okay? It's stated that none in authority would actually confront any of this. They were really fearful of being accused of an attack on the royal family, and so say all of us. This is beyond disappointing. So whenever the issue or any of these issues were raised, it was just quietly dropped. Many diplomats speak of how Andrew's staff would request that attractive women be invited to events. The memo going out was that he liked blondes, and one consul said, "I'm a diplomat, not a pimp." Now, the Duke of York's diary was carefully designed purely for his own benefit. Holidays as the guest of the royal family in Dubai. Plus, back in London, he was blatantly hosting businessmen and bankers at Buckingham Palace. At a time, he was representing as special representative of trade and investment. Andrew offered to act as a patron of a London business school if Eugenie was accepted for an MBA course for free. His offer was declined. In 2001, he stepped down. Thank God. The British government complicit in the lack of information available provided about his time as a civil servant, still complicit despite numerous freedom of information requests, including from Andrew Lownie. Nor has the Duke ever had to answer to any of this. Yet there are people out there making excuses for all of it. As of today, making excuses for all of it. It is unforgivable, even here in YouTube land. I will finish with this. A former Buckingham Palace staff member who did work with the Prince claimed that the firm, the Palace, spent 4 years nudging the press away from the negative Andrew stories in return for cooperation in other areas. There is so much more to be uncovered, and I'm sure we'll learn even more when the book is published on August the 14th. Please let me know your thoughts down below, but be aware that everything that the Daily Mail reported today is solid. They know it can be backed up. They know it has gone through legal, or they wouldn't risk publishing it. After reading this, I conclude that there is no justification. There is no excuse. I have been provided with enough named sources and detail to believe this account. Also, I just want to share something a little more personal. Over the last year, I was actually approached to appear on a mainstream media TV show. And I knocked it back because I was reasonably sure that it might lead to further work. And I didn't want to be beholden to anyone. We all know that anyone that pays you a salary sort of gets to dictate what you say. And I don't want to be a part of any propaganda. That's why I evaluate the facts of things and I tell you the truth as I see it, without fear or favour. And I will continue to do so. Let me know what you think down below and I'll see you again soon. Bye.